Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Science Dispatch podcast. My name is Cameron English, your host as always. Very excited to be here, as I'm sure Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at ACSH, is also. Are you thrilled, Chuck? Are you excited?
I'm thrilled, though I have to be. I am a little concerned about that pregnant pause before you remembered it was me.
You know, I get so nervous being around you because you're so inspiring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wait. Let me put on some more rain gear for this part of the talk.
Oh, I'm going to steal that. I like that one. Okay. All right, everybody. My false flattery aside, we've got a great story here. This is by Chuck. It's called, "Is Sugar Addictive, or Are We Just Craving a Scapegoat?" I like it. Really good pun there. Good stuff. Let me read this introduction, Chuck, and then break this down for us. So you write, "Is sugar the new nicotine, or maybe just the current scapegoat for our collective confusion over what's, quote, healthy? Science can't decide if sugar is a genuine addiction or a guilty pleasure, and our ever-changing regulations seem guided more by politics than hard data. Let's see whether sugar really deserves its bad rap, or if we're simply hooked on the confusion." Okay, take it away. What's going on here?
So this came to us via one of the members of the board who evidently graduated from Harvard and gets the Harvard Gazette, which had a long article about whether sugar was addictive, and they kind of tried to parse their way through it, saying it was more habit forming than anything else, but that got us to writing about it. So the first thing we should recognize is that our definition of addiction has changed quite a bit in the last few decades. Previously, addiction was really a purely physiologic response. That there were symptoms of withdrawal, there were symptoms of dependency. You could do what's really become modern MRI imaging and see various parts of the brain light up to go along with it, but it was primarily a physiologic problem. And then several years ago, that definition got broadened to include actions by the users more than simply the physiology. So the National Institute of Drug Abuse, the NIDA, said that addiction was a compulsive drug-seeking behavior. So a move away from the purely physiological. And the DSM-5, which stands as the gold standard of what we consider substance use disorders, said that in addition to these physiologic changes, there was impaired control, social impairment, risky use, all behavioral qualities. All behavioral qualities that if you could sufficiently torture sugar addiction enough would fall into the category of eating disorders. And actually, to be fair, it does share some similarities there because our craving for sugar is a built-in physiologic drive, much like our hunger is, which is not the case for opium or alcohol or tobacco, which are all things that we could survive very well without. So that's been a significant change in the thinking, and it's come from the realm of science into the realm of social media, where all of our cultural transformations now take place. And the term sugar addiction is thrown around a lot. Now, since it has very little scientific meaning, it really serves as a virtue signal or dog whistle, depending on which side of the camp you are for these things. In the social media, and has gotten a lot of play, especially as we begin to move towards the Make America Healthy Again Commission and their work. So there is no universal agreement on what constitutes a sugar addiction. Moreover, there's really no universally agreed upon definition for what is a healthy nutritious food. There's a lot of different classifications for it, but we haven't come up with it. So when you start looking at the issues of policy, it's very hard to say what science is actually informing those policy decisions. As I write in the article, the science that's informing those decisions is political science, not nutritional science. And when you start to look at some of the actions that are being taken now, you begin to wonder what's really going on. So we have the statement by Secretary Kennedy that, what you choose to eat is your personal freedom. He's not going to be taking food away from us. At the same time that there's a growing choir of people saying that we should take soda out of SNAP benefits. At the same time as that, the administration has made some very interesting changes in the school lunch program. And the school lunch program feeds 30 million kids every day and feeds them breakfast and lunch. And if you look in some cases, you'll see that the school lunch program runs year-round despite the fact being closed. The schools are closed during the summer because it has become a nutritional lifeline for a lot of American children. So the administration has now taken away funding from the school districts that were bringing in locally farmed foods and therefore theoretically more nutritious foods. They've removed that all from the program. So it seems to be that there's a lot of confusion in terms of what sugar addiction means scientifically, which is now carrying over to what sugar addiction and all these other nutrition concerns mean in terms of policy that is going to be coming out over the next year or so.
I'm reminded of a documentary I watched years ago. It's called Fathead. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. Really interesting. This guy went on a fast food diet for 30 days to debunk Super Size Me. So the only difference was he didn't stuff himself. He said, look, I'm going to use my brain and I'm going to pick and choose certain foods. So I'm going to avoid large orders of fries and I'm going to avoid sugary soda, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the thing, one of his conclusions was, people say this food is addictive, but if it's an addiction, it's a sucky one because I didn't want to eat this food for like 6 months after I got done with my little experiment. And I'm reminded of that and what you're saying because just this week or last week I started up a diet because I want to be in good shape as my kids get older and so on and so forth. And a big part of that is cutting out a lot of excess sugar. And it's only been a couple of weeks, but I don't have the shakes. I'm not, laying in the fetal position in my office. I'm perfectly functional. It's not that hard to give up sugar. And lots of people do it just fine. So I guess the question is, why are we pursuing this continually? You went through a lot of the literature in this story. Anecdotally, I think we can say that this is a little off base, to put it politely. So, I mean, is it really just politics? Is it really just people looking for, a new scare to flog?
Well, there may be that. I think that there's, intent aside, we keep looking for that silver bullet that cures our problem easily. There's always got to be a simple answer for our nutritional problems. In fact, I'm busy writing something on that now. But simply focusing on sugar is not going to correct our overall bad nutritional ways. You can, remove sugar as much as you want, and there will be unintended consequences. So we took sugar out of soda and we put in sucralose, and now they're reporting that sucralose is bad for you too. So that's got to go, even though we might want to go to a pure thing like water, the soda companies have preempted us, and they are the biggest sellers of water on the planet at this point. So we're kind of stuck in a lot of ways with it. But I think that it's really part of that magic bullet. If there was some simple solution for our complex bad behavior, then life would be better again. And so that there's any number of people that would like to push that narrative, and there's any number of ways to do it. And certainly the moral high ground is a great place to stand in making that argument. Being outraged appears at one level noble and really requires very little effort on your part to change things. And so it's a great voice for the internet to take.
I don't even know where.
That summed it up. Thank you.
I don't even know where to go, man. Okay. Let's go this way. Maybe a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but I think it's an important one. We talked about Kennedy taking over as HHS secretary, and everyone's apoplectic and shaking their fists at the sky like an angry old man from The Simpsons. And yeah, zero sugar, right? Yeah, enjoy your sucralose sweetened root beer, which we are not being paid to promote, by the way. We're just saying that because we want to, okay? Okay, anyways, what I'm getting at is, Kennedy, in many ways, is rightly framed as kind of a kooky dude, lots of strange ideas that are not justified. Nevertheless, a lot of what he promotes, you can find in major academic journals.
Yes.
You can find like his claims about fluoride as a neurotoxin. You can find that in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. And a lot of these claims about sugar addiction and related, nutrition issues, PubMed is loaded with journal articles, crappy low-grade epidemiology and rodent studies where these poor little creatures are just force-fed, French fries and then, shocked on the foot and then fed more French. I'm like, what are we doing here, right? So in other words, we promote all this junk and then it gets into the headlines. People like Kennedy run with it and we go, what are you doing, man? This is all unsubstantiated. You can't do this to the SNAP program. You can't do that. And it's like, well, for 40 years we've been telling people this, and only now that it's being acted upon are you bothered. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so there's two pieces I'll take out. No one is making any kind of outright lies. There is definitely a kernel of truth in everything that the Maha moms want to talk about. I don't deny that. There's some questions we can have, serious questions around ultra-processed foods. And we can talk about the trade-off of whether in the end they're net good or net bad. That's not the case that we're discussing. I'm just saying that there's a kernel of truth lying within it. But then it really gets to this implementation phase, which is always the tricky part of the conversation. And what I find most fascinating is how both sides will take the same argument and try and leverage it in their own way, in their own time, over their own things. For the same people that are screaming that we should get sugar out of SNAP, there is a significant overlap in the people that were saying, you can't tell me to get a vaccine. So where do we draw the lines about, public health measures or bodily autonomy? As I've been trying to write of late, when we start talking about public health measures, we're going to be talking about education, regulation, and mandates. And as it turns out, I guess it depends on whether it's a regulation or mandate that you will like, whether the government should be enforcing or not. There's no consistency in how we approach those kind of things. The same people, people would be very unhappy to be told this is how they can spend their money. But it's okay if we do that for SNAP beneficiaries that are using taxpayer money to buy food. They said it's a taxpayer way of buying soda. We won't support soda with our taxes. Now we will support soda with our sugar subsidies and with our corn subsidies, but that's another thing. And it's that reductionism and siloing of what we're actually doing that makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Crazier.
Yeah. I agree. And good on you for not giving full credit for your insanity to other people. Way to not be a hypocrite. It's hard to have these kind of discussions because people only care about the problem if someone they don't like does it. I think that's the heart of it, right? So like what I was saying about Kennedy, everyone in science is raging that, they're cutting funding or they're pressuring NIH to do certain studies on certain topics. And how dare you? This is free inquiry. This is academia, but I mean, we saw the same thing over the last 5 years, right? And whatever, those issues aren't relevant, but I think it's a microcosm of it here with this issue with sugar. It's like, let me be in my lab, pay me to do all of these useless experiments on sugar addiction, but don't actually do anything with it, right? Because then it's bad, right? But if I just want to tinker in my lab with my graduate students, then that's fine because we're just pursuing knowledge,
Well, but no, once we say, well, let's bring the scientists in for the conversation, then we have to fight about which scientists to bring in, and then we have a whole new fight about, these scientists were biased because they were paid by, our tax dollar or by the Corn Institute or, whoever it might be. We haven't found a way to sit down and really talk with one another and do the hard work of getting a consensus on what things we can agree on, what things we don't agree on, and which ones we're going to act upon.
It should be simple in this case, right? A substance that Mother Nature put in every single food, a bedrock nutrient that your body uses, every organ, every cell of your body uses sugar, right? Can we sit here and go, okay, we're going to move on to something else, right? We're going to find another exposure that's probably harmful. We're going to focus on some other, can we just, you know what I mean? like even on this issue, that can't happen, right? Because
no,
there's too many interest groups that are gonna benefit one way or the other. There's
many stakeholders. We don't use interest groups.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stakeholders.
People who use steaks.
Yes, or steaks. Now that's whether it's with an AK or an EAK. It's a completely different kind of steak. Back to my point. That that there are a variety of stakeholders, and they each have a view. And we've been remiss in not letting some of the stakeholders speak. We've been remiss in sometimes putting our thumb on the scale one way or another about who shows up for the conversations. So again, a kernel of truth in what's being done in terms of reformulating some of our committees to better reflect the thinking in terms of science writ large. I don't have a problem with looking at that. On the other hand, I think that there's also a difficulty. If you can't define nutrition and you can't define addiction, then it's very tough to come up with really great policies. And we should admit to that. So here's one that I came across in this week, just a place where I just fell into another cave of my ignorance. Around physical activity. So we come from, we're omnivores, we're generalists. We're not really great at capturing meat, and we're not so good at, digesting plants. We just, we can do both, but we don't do both perfectly. So the apex predator, the lion, spends about 18 hours a day sleeping and about 2 hours a day looking for a snack. They don't spend a great deal of time, and energy doing that. And as it turns out, humans as hunter-gatherers, we're spending about the same amount of time. We're, as a species, inherently I don't want to use the word lazy, but we like to conserve our energy. So we don't spend a whole lot of time running around and doing things. Now, for many centuries, the only way to plow a field was to push your own plow through the field, we did an awful lot of work to survive. But today, we don't have to do a whole lot of work and we can get a whole lot of calories. So it may not, what I was getting at is it may not all be an issue of that we're inactive. Evolutionarily, evidently, we are pretty inactive to begin with.
So it comes back to abundance being a blessing and a curse, because I don't want to go back to, plowing a field. There's people that are great at farming, so we let them farm, and then you and I do what we're better at. That works. But I don't know. I guess maybe as we wrap up here, people just aren't satisfied with that sort of answer, right? It just kind of is because of the nature of humanity and the conveniences we have access to. There's no clear villain or hero. It's not easily solved, and so
No, and we are a victim of our own evolution. We have evolved to fit into the environment that we've busily created. Many of God's creatures are not blessed with the ability to refashion their environment as we have. But we've refashioned an environment, and now we're demonstrating how we fit into it, and it may unfortunately be that the obese fit into it fairly well.
And this is, I know this sends shivers down people's spines, including my own, but even those people are healthier than their fitter ancestors in many ways. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're not dying from, they don't cut their fingers and get a nasty bacterial infection and die from it. They put Neosporin on it, and then they go about their chubby days.
You are more of a former chubette than I. I'm a lap chubette. But
Did you say chubette? Is that what you said?
Chubette, yes. And there's any number of medical breakthroughs that have allowed us, to be that way.
Yeah.
To both have been a chubette and to have survived.
I love that word.
I'm thinking, I've written, God knows I've written about Ozempic. That's made a big, a difference in things.
Yeah.
And certainly all the management we have for the diseases that are nutritionally related, diabetes, atherosclerosis, those are things that have allowed people with those problems to live. I said this before. 100 years ago, the lifespan of somebody with juvenile onset diabetes was nil.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I don't know. Maybe we just can't take yes for an answer. There's got to be a dragon to slay. I don't know what it is. I thought your conclusion here was great. Let me just read part of this, and then we'll pack it in for the day. So you say, so sugar is addictive? Scientifically speaking, not really. Not in the way nicotine or opioids hijack your brain and body, but culturally and politically, absolutely. Sugar has become the perfect scapegoat. It's everywhere. It tastes good. It plays right into our anxieties about health, obesity, and moral virtue. Without clear definitions, robust human data, and consistent nutritional standards, we've let public fear, industry interest, and policy-making theater do the heavy lifting. I think that's the perfect summation of what we're dealing with here. Is the right answer is either hard to find or we don't want to find it, and so this is what we settle with, and nobody's happy.
Okay, so I'll end with a different piece that I found in the same fine writer. We're not addicted to sugar. We're addicted to the illusion that demonizing the right ingredient will fix our broken food system. Spoiler alert: it's going to take a lot more than cutting out cupcakes.
Yeah, and why would you want to? Cupcakes are a terrific gift from above.
We should not, in our rush to become healthy, we should not take away the little joys of life.
Yeah, I agree. The Spartans are gone for a reason, okay? Let's not go back to that.
I like that.
All right. Well, once again, this helpful story, and I do mean that. It's very helpful. You did a lot of breaking down of the data and definitions here. Story's called Is Sugar Addictive or Are We Just Craving a Scapegoat by Dr. Chuck Dinerstein. That's at acsh.org. If you go to the website, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We'll send you the stories that we publish. The ones you read are usually the ones we talk about. So you'll show up a little more informed. Follow us on X. It's at ACSH.org. I'm at CamJEnglish. You can reach Chuck by email. He will respond in 4 to 6 business days or whenever he feels like it. Thank you for joining us as always. We'll see you next time.